During a disastrous interview on NBC's Meet the Press, Donald Trump was confronted about his revenge against his political opponents and his various violations of the Constitution, the Supreme Court, and due process. And his answers to these questions are utterly chilling. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, we're probably going to be doing multiple videos about Trump's NBC Meet the Press interview because there are so many topics discussed, and each of the major ones, quite frankly, merit their own in-depth videos. But I wanted to start with this one because arguably it's the most important. It's more important than the economy and foreign policy, the Constitution, and Trump's fidelity to the Constitution, or more obviously, his lack thereof. He has no respect for the Constitution, the Supreme Court, and due process, and even the notion of not seeking revenge against his political opponents. And he's confronted about all of this by Kristen Welker. And we're going to start with this one because this answer is by far the most chilling of all the chilling answers he gave.
Your Secretary of State says everyone who's here, citizens and non-citizens, deserve due process. Do you agree, Mr. President?
I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know.
Well, the Fifth Amendment says
I don't know. It might say that, but if you're talking about that, then we'd have to have 1 million or 2 million or 3 million trials. We have thousands of people that are some murderers and some drug dealers and some of the worst people on earth. Some of the worst, most dangerous people on earth. And I was elected to get them the hell out of here, and the courts are holding me from doing it.
But even given those numbers that you're talking about, don't you need to uphold the Constitution of the United States as president?
I don't know. I have to respond by saying again, I have brilliant lawyers that work for me, and they are going to obviously follow what the Supreme Court said. What you said is not what I heard the Supreme Court said. They have a different interpretation.
So when she asks him point blank, don't you have an obligation to uphold the Constitution? The President of the United States, a man who is vested, charged in Article 2 of the Constitution to take care that the laws be faithfully executed, instead of saying, well, of course, Kristen, absolutely, that's my foremost obligation under the Constitution is to uphold it. He says, I don't know. Imagine a Democratic president, or quite frankly, any pre-Trump Republican president saying something like that. They never would. No matter what the policy differences are, they understood, even if they privately sought to violate. I mean, Richard Nixon wouldn't give an answer to a question like that. Even Nixon would have the wherewithal to say, oh, of course, I have to uphold the Constitution. I'm not a crook. You know, Trump can't even find the wherewithal to say that. He can't and won't publicly commit to upholding the Constitution. In a pre-Trump age, that would be a political career killer. That would be grounds for impeachment. If President Biden said something like that during an interview, there would have been articles of impeachment drafted against him the very same day. And I expect that many Democrats would have been willing to vote for it as well. But the Republican Party has become such an authoritarian cult of personality that Trump feels comfortable to say, I don't know. I don't know if I have an obligation to uphold the Constitution. This is where we are, and we're 3 months in, a little more than 100 days. It's shocking stuff. And I'll also point out, Kristen Welker is right. Due process is required by the Constitution and centuries of Supreme Court precedent, regardless of how convenient it is. And no one is saying that Trump can't deport people, that Trump can't deport undocumented migrants and criminals who are non-citizens at the very least, right? He can't deport citizen criminals no matter how much he wants to, but you still have to follow the law and color within the lines created by federal law. And when he says, of course, I'll follow the Supreme Court, he's not. He's blatantly not. He admitted the other day he could pick up the phone, call Bukele, the president of El Salvador, and demand the release of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, and that he could get it done just like that. And he said he won't do it. He is defying the Supreme Court. But wait, there's more.
Obviously, you've had a back and forth with the Supreme Court. In a 9-0 decision, the Supreme Court directed your administration to facilitate the return. You've talked about this in the past of Kilmar Abrego Garcia from a prison in El Salvador, whose deportation your administration called an administrative error. You said in a recent interview you could bring him back, but you won't. Are you defying the Supreme Court, sir?
No, I'm relying on the Attorney General of the United States, Pam Bondi, who's very capable, doing a great job, because I'm not involved in the legality or the illegality. I have lawyers to do that, and that's why I have a great DOJ. We have a great one. We had a very corrupt one before. Now we have a great one. And they're not viewing the decision the way you said it. They don't.
It's just so funny to me. Yeah, just Trump's Supreme Court, excuse me, Trump's Justice Department, Trump's administration could look at something so clear as day as the sky is blue and somehow interpret it to mean the sky is green. We understand it says the sky is blue. You say the sky is blue, but what is blue? I mean, we just don't agree with your interpretation. Blue to us is green. Like, this is where, the Supreme Court could not be clearer. They said on a 9-0 basis that the government acted improperly, and the district court properly ordered the government to facilitate Kilmar Abrego Garcia's release. And the Supreme Court said that it needed to keep the courts informed of affirmative actions it was taking to get Kilmar Abrego Garcia released from El Salvador. And again, as Kristen Welker notes, Trump admitted, he screwed himself and probably screwed his lawyers in court by saying, yeah, I could pick up the phone right now and make it happen just like that, but I'm not gonna. Just willful defiance. Here's another clip.
Part of the same thing, though. The big emergency right now is that we have thousands of people that we want to take out, and we have some judges that want everybody to go to
Some
court.
of them you appointed, sir, including
That's all right.
3 on the Supreme Court.
They change. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable how that happens, but they do change.
So think about that. And I'm glad Kristen Welker brought this up, because not enough people point this out to Trump and Trump supporters. Trump is being shut down not just by longtime conservative judges like the one out of the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals, whom I've been citing quite regularly. This is a Reagan appointee warning about the dangers of the Trump administration's overreach. But Trump has been at times checked by even his own conservative judges at the federal level and at the Supreme Court level, even higher, right? Amy Coney Barrett, Neil Gorsuch, and Brett Kavanaugh. And Trump's like, that's unbelievable. I can't believe they changed. Or maybe you are acting so illegally, so unconstitutionally that even your appointees from time to time are like, bro, chill. But Trump can't fathom that, nor can the MAGA cult, because Trump is by definition perfect and infallible, and anything Trump does by definition is either constitutional or, quite frankly, should supersede the Constitution. And so they can't fathom this idea that maybe just Trump screwed up, that Trump is acting outside his remit. So Trump is already lashing out at judges he appointed, which, again, if that's true, if these judges are terrible, as Trump has often said, judges who rule against me are terrible. Okay, if that's the case, you appointed them, so that's an indictment of your judgment. Either way, Trump sucks, objectively.
Talk about some of the other actions you've taken over the past 100 days. Last month, you directed your Attorney General, Pam Bondi, to review 2 people who you perceived to be your political adversaries. And yet you told me in December that you would not direct the Justice Department to investigate your political foes. What changed?
Well, no, I just look at people, and I'm not directing anybody. They looked at these 2 people. They might have known it, or they might have heard it from 2 years ago. One person said, he knew me so well. He was, I think, on CNN or MSDNC, but they're both failing networks. You're happy to know, even though one of them, I guess, is related to you in one form or another, although they're trying to cut him loose as fast as possible. But it was well known that this one person, it was almost like he was my brother. I don't even know who he is. Maybe he was there. Maybe he was in the Oval Office a few times as a surrogate for, somebody in some form of government, along with 25 other people that sat in the back of the room or stood in the back of a room. I have no idea who this guy is. And he's out there. And then he did a book called Anonymous. I think that's really subversion. I think it's spying. It's something really bad.
But you passed an executive order calling for your Attorney General to investigate that.
For a long time. And the other one said that the election was so wonderful. It was it turned out it wasn't a wonderful election. It was a corrupt election.
You said you wanted to unify the country. Does going after political foes undercut that goal?
No, not at all. No, we want honest people.
Right. So again, this was also a chilling exchange too. So again, Trump's lying. He did sign an executive order demanding that the Justice Department target Chris Krebs, the former director of the cybersecurity division of the Department of Homeland Security under Donald Trump, because Chris Krebs told the truth and said, yeah, there's no evidence the 2020 election was stolen or rigged. Trump can't handle the fact that he lost legitimately to Joe Biden. And so he has to spin this elaborate conspiracy theory. Oh, it was stolen. Chris Krebs was in on it. And not only was he in on it, he acted illegally, which merits an investigation by the Justice Department. I'm going to violate decades of established precedent since the Nixon administration, because Nixon tried to corruptly weaponize his Justice Department against his political adversaries. And afterwards, we were like, no, we can't have that. There has to be some degree of separation between the president and the Justice Department. Well, I'm going to violate all of that. I'm going to order my DOJ to go after Chris Krebs and Miles Taylor, who also used to work in the Trump administration, but wrote a book basically criticizing Donald Trump from within the Trump administration. So his answers are incoherent. Oh, I said I wasn't going to, go after my political opponents, but I'm not going after my political opponents by signing an executive order demanding that my political opponents be prosecuted. It's so different. You just wouldn't understand. No, Kristen Welker had it right. Donald Trump is weaponizing the Justice Department explicitly to go after his political opponents. President Biden never signed an executive order I demand that you go after Donald Trump. I demand that you go after this particular MAGA Republican. I demand that you go after my political opponents. Donald Trump is doing this, and he's doing it in broad daylight, and MAGA is making excuses because it was never about principle. They want a weaponized Justice Department. They want an affirmatively weaponized Justice Department, but one that will target liberals, progressives, minorities, marginalized groups, blue cities, blue states, and the media, and that's it, right? But under no circumstances can they ever be investigated or prosecuted for any reason. Total double standard. And that's why you see and hear very few MAGA Republicans object to what Trump is doing. One last clip. Kristen Welker puts a button on it and challenges Trump to address people who are concerned about his authoritarian overreach.
Picture people who have lived in countries like the Philippines, Hungary, Russia. They look at some of your actions going after civil service, going after universities, law firms, the media. They say it's out of an authoritarian playbook. What do you say to those who believe you are taking the country down an authoritarian path?
Well, there you go again. Why don't you ask it a different way? Many people wanted to come into our country. Many people love Trump. I won the election. They didn't win the election. I got a lot more votes than they did. I won the popular vote. I won all 7 swing states by a lot. A lot of people were surprised. I said, I think he could win 4, maybe 5. No, I won all 7, and I won by a lot. And I won, actually, I think there was a lot of hanky-panky going on, but it was too big to rig. That's the good news. It's too big to rig. But let me just say, so when you make these statements about, people say this, people, well, they had their chance at the election and they lost big.
Picture people who have.
So again, not concerned at all. He's like, I won, you lost, and I get to do whatever I want. If that's authoritarian, so be it. Donald Trump did win the election. There is no evidence that he cheated to do so. He won legitimately and fairly, just like he lost the 2020 election legitimate and fairly. See, because Democrats are morally superior to Donald Trump, just objectively so, we're willing to admit when we lose, and we're willing to acknowledge that we can lose. Trump and the most diehard of Trump cultists can't admit that because they're terrible. They're just terrible. It's part of a cult, okay? Well, Donald Trump is fallible. He is capable of losing free and fair elections, and he did. But because he can't publicly admit that, he is now overcorrecting now that he has his grasp on power again. And I will note that it's not just people talking about, there's also polling data to back it up. As Axios reported 5 days ago, exclusive, most Americans see Trump as, quote, dangerous dictator, poll says. A majority of Americans say Trump is a dangerous dictator who poses a threat to democracy and believe he's overstepped his authority by actions such as the mass firing of federal employees, a new survey says. The wide-ranging poll released Tuesday on Trump's 100th day in office is the latest sign of him losing support for his immigration and economic policies, the 2 issues that largely fueled his election. Only 4 in 10 Americans expressed favorable views of Trump after his first 100 days in office, according to the survey by the nonpartisan Public Religion Research Institute, and 52% agreed with the provocative statement that Trump, quote, is a dangerous dictator whose power should be limited before he destroys American democracy. Damn. So we're only 100 days in. The majority of Americans think he's a dangerous dictator. He doesn't show any signs of a limiting principle or relenting. And this is terrible news. And again, his response, rather than say, listen, I'm not authoritarian. Here's why I'm doing what I'm doing. People who disagree with me need not fear, blah, blah. He doesn't even try with any of that. No pretense whatsoever. It's just, I won, you lost, so screw you. That's where we are. Again, we're going to do other videos about this NBC Meet the Press interview because they talk about tariffs, the economy, foreign policy, and Trump says so many unhinged things. They do merit each a deep dive. But I felt this was the most important overall. So we're leading with it. And in the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.